Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio on a Workbench Wednesday. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are and whenever you happen to be watching this. Today I want to talk about small layouts, micro and mini layouts. I want to talk about why I like them so much and why I think you should too. So what are we talking about when we say mini or micro layout? Well, for me, personally, I think a mini layout was probably anything smaller than your traditional 4x8. Anything smaller than like 32 square feet. That's a mini layout. Down to about 3x6. 3x6 is a good size for what I would consider a mini layout. Smaller than 3x6, smaller than that 18 square feet, I would probably consider that a micro layout. But again, these are just my definitions. This is my opinion. Your mileage may vary. You may find other opinions out there on the internet and elsewhere that differ. But yeah, so a mini layout exists between about 4x8 and 3x6, and all the different configurations you can fit into that space. And a micro would be, 3x6 or smaller, at least for me. I'm not really talking about modules here either. By definition, a module or a section is part of a larger system, part of a larger layout, whether it be a club layout or something you're building yourself at home. A single module, while can be a lot of fun to build, and you can put a lot into it, I don't consider it a mini and micro layout on its own. I suppose it could be if you designed it that way. But I'm kind of getting off the rails here, if you'll pardon the pun. What we're talking about here today is mini and micro layouts. And to me, in my mind, that's a complete system. That's a complete self-contained little world, or a little piece of world building, all in one small confined area. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that there are several examples of mini and even a micro layout here at the studio. Gruesome Gulch here is what I would consider a mini layout. It's about 3x6 feet, and it definitely is its own self-contained little world. Same with the Santa Fe and St. Nick here that I built for Christmas last year. It's kind of right on the line between mini and micro, in my opinion. Not that these definitions are all that important, but yeah, it's 38 by 60 inches, so a little over 3 feet by 5 feet, so kind of right on the line there, but definitely its own self-contained little world. And then there's the Bandit Canyon Railway over here in ON18, which I think really falls firmly into the micro layout category, since it's only 24 by 36 inches, just 2 by 3 feet. At least that's the footprint. It's actually, the entire layout is about 42 inches tall, and then sitting on the stand, that brings it up to 6 feet at the top of this butte right here. So I make up for the small footprint with lots of vertical separation in the scenery. And then we've got the Calico Mountain section over here of the Thunder Mesa layout, previously part of Thunder Mesa 1.9. And this one sort of qualifies as a module and mini layout all in one, because it's got the ON18 tracks up here, which don't connect to the rest of the layout, but then it's got the ON30 tracks down here, which do. I'm thinking of just saving this as a micro layout, or I'm sorry, mini layout. See, I'm messing up on my own definitions. This one's about 3 by 5 feet, so mini, micro, kind of right on the line, like Santa Fe and St. Nick. But yeah, thinking of just saving this one as a mini, micro, let's just call it small little layout. We'll see how I feel about it as the project over here progresses. Then we have the Thunder Mesa layout itself, which does not qualify as a mini or micro by any stretch of the imagination, though it's not a huge model railroad. It's actually rather modest, and will be more so once the Thunder Mesa 2.0 renovation is done. It's going to occupy a footprint, not including aisles, of about 12 by 8 feet, which is pretty small for a model railroad, especially an O-scale model railroad. What can I say? I like small model railroads. Now, what got me thinking about all this was a recent trip out to San Diego, where we went to Balboa Park and visited the San Diego Model Railroad Museum. I had never been before. I grew up in Southern California, but had never somehow made it down there to the San Diego Model Railroad Museum. And if you're not familiar with this place, let me tell you, it is world class. It is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the country. It's home to several club layouts, and every one of them is fantastically well done. But to bring it back to the topic of this video, they're all enormous. Especially the HO club layouts that are there are they're incredibly ambitious, incredibly big, and it takes a club to run a layout that size. And I got to thinking on the way home that, probably a lot of people visit this place and they see these layouts. And if they're not, more familiar with the hobby, or if they're thinking about getting into it, they come away with the impression that this is what model railroading is. You need an enormous amount of real estate or a huge building in Balboa Park, or a giant basement or something like that, to build this mighty empire. And that sort of thinking has also been reinforced a lot by the model railroad press historically, though there's not nearly as much model railroad press as there used to be. Back in my youth, there were many different model railroad magazines. And the general consensus, I think, a lot of times in those magazines was that bigger is better. You want this huge basement empire. Look at layouts like the John Allen's Gory and Defeated, which was a brilliant model railroad. But I take one look at that thing, and as a one-person show, it's just me here. I don't have a staff. I see that and I think, that is a lot to keep clean. It's a lot of scenery to keep clean. It's a lot of track to keep clean. It's a lot of maintenance just to keep that thing running when you have a layout that size. That's my thought on it. But back to the topic at hand, it's like, I think a lot of newcomers to the hobby see that and they think, well, that's what I want to do. And, a big model railroad with huge mountains and scenery and, canyons to the floor like they have in San Diego. And, that's incredibly impressive. And I can understand wanting to replicate that thing. Oh, I want to do that, But my advice is always to start small. I talk to a lot of people who are new to the hobby all the time, just getting started, getting excited about it. They think this is something they want to do. They want to create their own little world. And my advice is always start small. And one of the best ways to start small, in my opinion, is with a good micro or mini layout. Let's look at the pros and cons. Now, I'm fortunate to have several good friends in the hobby who are also into mini and micro layouts. And while we look at some of the pros and cons, I'm going to be rolling some B-roll of their layouts that I took at the most recent ON30 Festa Fiesta out in Riverside, California, where we try to get together once a year and hang out and run small trains. But since, a lot of these, what you're going to be seeing is ON30, but I want you to know that the pros and cons I'm going to be talking about here apply to any scale, really. It really doesn't make any difference what scale you choose to model in for these things to apply. That said, and out of the way, here are the pros, in my opinion, to starting small with a micro or mini layout. Number one is lower cost, quite obviously. Less materials, less equipment, less of everything on a small mini or micro layout is going to cost you a lot less. So if you find the price of entry into this hobby to be too high, you might want to readjust your expectations. Stop thinking about that massive basement empire and think, well, maybe start with a small micro or mini layout. It's going to cost you much, much less in the long run. And you're going to learn a lot, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Obviously, this is kind of a no-brainer. A small layout takes up a small amount of space. Who knew, right? Go figure. So if you are pressed for space, if space is a concern, if all you have is a corner in a den or a spare bedroom or a corner of the garage or the attic, that's all the space you have, or you live in an apartment, a micro or mini layout is a great way to go. Going to cost you less, not going to take up a whole lot of room. Another pro is that it's not going to take you forever to finish. You can finish a mini or micro layout in a year or less, a few months sometimes, in fact, depending on how elaborate you want to make it. That's all up to you. But it doesn't have to be a, multi-year or lifelong commitment to finish this thing. You can actually get it done and enjoy it and then move on to your next project all within a year or two or less. Another positive, and this is a big one for me, is it gives you the chance to experiment, to try different things. And this applies both to new modelers and to more experienced modelers. If you're new to the hobby and don't know exactly what you want to do, just kind of have a vague idea, a mini or micro layout really helps you to hone in and figure it out. Because believe me, by the time you're done with that thing, you're going to have a much, much better idea of what it is you want to do in this hobby moving forward. So that ability to experiment without breaking the bank or using a ton of materials or taking up a ton of space or taking a whole bunch of time is just a great pro on this list, in my opinion. It's really an important consideration. And at the same time, another important consideration is that you're going to learn all the skills you need. If you're totally new, if you're a total noob, as the kids say, to this hobby, and you've never built a model before in your life, but you want to try it, building a little micro layout or mini layout, you're going to learn all the skills that you would need to build that dream basement empire or attic empire or garage empire, whatever that you might be thinking about. You're going to learn the electronics, you're going to learn to solder, you're going to learn to take things apart and put them back together, hopefully, so they'll still run. You're going to learn how to paint, you're going to learn how to weather, you're going to learn how to build scenery, you're going to learn how to lay track. All of that same stuff is distilled down in a micro layout or a mini layout. It's like an advanced course, a crash course, if you will. You can learn it all in a year building a micro or mini layout. And the final pro I've written down here, at least the ones I could think of off the top of my head, is more for experienced modelers. This kind of goes back to the chance to experiment. For more experienced modelers, it gives them a chance to try something completely different than maybe what they've been doing before. A different era, perhaps, a different locale, a different prototype, something that they've been kind of been itching to do, but they haven't really had a chance to do it. A micro or mini layout, since you don't have a whole lot invested in it as compared to a traditional large layout, it gives you that opportunity to experiment and try new things without breaking the bank or spending the rest of your life on it. So those are the pros that I could think of, just off the top of my head. You might be able to think of others, and if you do, please put them in the comments down below. We can talk about it down there. But that's what I came up with as the positives for starting out in the hobby by building a small mini or micro layout. The cons, honestly, I might be slightly prejudiced because I am a avowed mini and micro layout lover. The cons are I could only come up with two. I could only come up with two. And they are limited operations and limited equipment. And those two kind of go hand in hand. On a small layout, there's only so much you can do. You can build a small switching layout. Absolutely. You can build a micro layout. I don't want you to give you the impression that a micro layout has to be a roundy round where the train is just chasing its caboose all the time. I know some experienced modelers, that just drives them crazy. They want to see real train operations. You can do that with a mini layout or a micro layout, and you can build a small shelf switching layout, something that's 6-8 feet long and a foot deep, and it just does switching. It switches an industry. Trains come in, trains get broken up, cars get moved out. That's totally legitimate. So you can do switching on a mini layout, but you can't do everything. You can't do something like, I don't know, like they do at the San Diego Model Railroad Museum. You can't model the Tehachapi Loop on a mini or micro layout. Even in Z-scale, it would still be huge. So, you're limited in your operations. You kind of have to choose one or the other is what I'm getting around to. You have to choose either that roundy round, so you have a mainline run, or you kind of have to choose switching. You can't really have both on a mini or micro layout. Well, now that I say that, it's like never say never. I'm sure there's probably a really clever plan out there that somebody came up with, maybe on multiple levels with a helix hidden in there, I don't know, that has both, but it's tough to do. It's tough to do on a small layout. And of course, mini layouts, if you're going to, have a mainline run, are going to have curves, and the curves are going to be sharp, and that's going to limit the equipment that you can run. But honestly, those are really the only two cons I came up with for starting out with a micro or mini layout. And if those things are so important to you that you want that mainline run and you want that switching, but you still want to start small, which I believe you should, then I would really consider building a module, starting out with a couple of modules, join a modular group, and then you can really eat your cake and have it too. You can start small, build a small layout, and have, go to meets, hook all those modules up, and have that long mainline run too. Or you can choose to build sections of layout over time as modules and build it into a larger system that all works together in the end. But that takes a great deal of planning and experience to know how to do. So that's maybe not the best place to start from. But if you join a modular club, you can start with a simple 2x4 foot or 2x6 foot module, or whatever, 3x4, whatever. You get the idea. And follow those guidelines that come with that modular group, be it Fremo or whatever, and get started that way. Now, if you're convinced by all this and want to jump into the hobby and build a small mini or micro layout, the next problem is, where do you get a plan? What what are you going to build? I like to come up with my own track plans, but that's just me. There are several small layout track plans on my website, thundermesa.studio. There are some good books out there. One I can highly recommend is from Calmback Publishing, the people that publish Model Railroader magazine. It's by Ian Rice. It's called Small, Smart, and Practical Track Plans. And if I can find a link to it, I will put it down below in the video description. So, those are the pros and cons as I see it. But, I told you at the top that I'm highly prejudiced on this topic. I just happen to love micro and mini layouts. If you have other cons that you can think of, please, you can put those down in the comments below, and we can talk about them down there too. But I did leave out one of the most positive aspects of a micro or mini layout, at least in my opinion, from where I'm coming from as a modeler in the modeling world, and that is the chance to tell a fun, cohesive story in a small space. It forces you to distill it down, to make sometimes difficult choices on which way to go, and it really forces you to know the story that you want to tell when you're building a small layout like that. And so it's wonderful from that storytelling aspect of the hobby, if that's something that you're interested in, and you can create, you know, fantastic little worlds. All of the examples that have been showing you over this on the B-roll, those are all wonderful examples of fantastic world building by these models, whether it be, Gary Beatty or Scott Carter or any of the other modelers I showed you. These guys are just, the best of the best at creating these little self-contained miniature worlds, and that's part of the joy of building a small layout. You don't have to spend a fortune on it. It doesn't take forever. It doesn't take up all the room in your house. And, you get to build this wonderful self-contained little world and play with it, play around in it for a while. So that's a win-win-win-win-win in my opinion. So, we'll continue the discussion in the comments down below. If you have a different point of view, I would love to hear about it. Until then, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in today for this little Workbench Wednesday vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy these kinds of discussions. This is kind of the philosophy of model railroading, if there is such a thing. That's a little pretentious, but you know what I mean. You can also follow Thunder Mesa over on Instagram and see what's new on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. Please like, subscribe, share, and hit that notification bell. I know all the YouTubers ask you to like their videos. The reason we do it is because it's not because we want to. It's not because we like begging for likes. It's because it really, really helps. The more you like this video, the more people that like this video, the more eyeballs it gets put in front of by the YouTube gods. So please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell if you'd like to see more from Thunder Mesa Studio. Of course, if you really enjoy what we're doing here at the channel and want to show your support, you can do what these wonderful people did and go over to patreon.com/ThunderMesa and show your support there. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now.